you very much, Irene. And it was such a great opportunity for people all around the world to hear your story. Awesome. So, on behalf of Park Launch team, I would like to express our gratitude to our guest speaker, Talal Gondal. We are very excited and honored to have you here, Talal.
Very excited to be here.
Absolutely. My name is Raheel Bodla. I'm a success coach for businesses and startups based in Silicon Valley. So, without any delay, I would like to turn it over to Talal. Talal, we are very excited to hear more from your side. So, give us your background in regards to what did you do, the accomplishments that you have in your life, and how you are leading TAG at this point in time. And before going into the specifics of TAG, the audience would love to hear more about the ecosystem and the environment of the industry space, and then more into TAG. So that's how we will keep. And if you allow me to interject to make it more
Of course.
interactive and interesting for it. Awesome. Over to you, Talal. So tell us about your background, about your story, about your accomplishments. We are very excited.
Sure. So I'll start perhaps with my background. So born and raised in Pakistan. When I was 18, from undergrad, moved to Europe, went to one of the top five business schools in Europe, then took the traditional route of banking, started with Bank of New York in asset management. Then afterwards, quickly found out then if I want to, move up the ladder, perhaps tech is the best place to be. At that time, tech was booming, still is booming in Europe. So ended up joining Trivago, which was at the time a smaller startup, 200 people in product management. Then afterwards, joined another startup called Fiber. There I was involved in you could say in a chief of staff role, working closely with the C-level team, um, part of M&A transactions, other projects. This is where I got my exposure to tech and finance, and eventually wanted to be, to move towards a venture capital side. So got the opportunity to work for a venture capital fund in Berlin for Russian investors. Worked with them, made a couple of investments there for a year or so. Then started my own startup, which was headhunting platform for developers. So with that platform, Scalers Partners, we placed over 80 developers in different startups in Germany, and then afterwards even corporates. Next to that, I also joined another venture firm called Lunar Ventures. So it's a deep tech investment firm doing pre-seed and seed investments in Germany and then in Europe. And my last stint was with Amazon. So in the venture capital team from Amazon in a corporate business role, covering EMEA. So that has been my my personal professional journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. So, Talal, how was it working with Russian investors in Germany? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So perhaps I can start with how I got the job, right? So how
Yeah.
I got the job was I saw it posted on LinkedIn. There were 700 plus applicants for this job, and so I had to stand out in some way. And how I stood out was I reached out to the HR manager through a friend who also went to the same university in Russia, and so she got me an interview with one of the LPs, who also had made his fortune with EdTech. So the discussion we had before, we're having on EdTech before, right?
Yeah.
So he had made his fortune also in EdTech. So I had very comprehensive knowledge of EdTech at that time because of my working with Fiber, which was one of the leading EdTech companies, and I had a lot of work on the EdTech side. So I was able to impress him to eventually get me a job with them, and it was a very I would say very interesting experience. They gave me quite a lot of independence. So I set up the whole shop in Berlin. So I was working with their team in Russia, and they were quite open to to hearing my ideas. Eventually, of course, it would be their decisions, but they were quite open, and they were very receptive of my opinion, and that was definitely a very it's a different working culture, of course, from Europe and from Pakistan. But
Yeah.
it took some adjusting, and then you feel part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that would be very, very interesting, especially as you said that's how you connected. so very important to connect with people and have a vision and the way you. So what would you say, Talal? What would be the important key elements, or maybe top three for your success in your academic, in your professional career, in your VC, and the way you're leading the startup? What would be your top three lessons to share with the audience?
So one of my mentors and also my friends, he told me at very early stage. He was not a German, not an outright German guy. So he told me at the very start of my career, Talal. So if you would like to succeed, or if you would like to stand out in your career, you would perhaps have to work 2 or 3 times harder than any white guy working next to you. And
Yes.
I know this is how it seems a bit, I don't know, strange, but this is how things are, right? So
Yes.
if you are outsider working in Germany, I know things are different in US, right? So I've also worked in
Yes.
US and I've also worked in UK. Things are different there, but there are
Yes.
very few outsiders in Germany or European scene, right? So if
Mhm.
you are as an outsider, if you want to stand out, then you have to be 2 times 3 times better than the next guy who is in position for who is in the same position as you, right? And that's the only way you will make your way forward. And I heard that advice, and I try to stand out um, at every stage of my career. And then also always being have been the one who has always been looking for the opportunities around me, right? So if I
Yes.
saw opportunity, I and if it made sense to me, I jumped it. I didn't think, okay, I have only been in this job for 1.5 years. Should I make the move, or not? So
Yeah.
I've been open to taking the risk, right? So risk taking
Yes.
ability is the second thing. So you should be able to you know uh, take the risk. What's the worst that could happen? That's the mentality that I go with. For me,
Absolutely.
what's the worst that could happen is I would probably have to get another job, right? So you have to
Yes.
work with that mentality. And then coming to entrepreneurship, that has been always been my eventual goal. So I wanted to start my own startup, or the other idea was to become a partner in a VC firm. So in terms of my career, these were two options, right? So and at the time, this idea of tag, that clicked very much. It made sense that you do it now, and so took the leap of faith, and here we are.
Absolutely. One has to take the leap of faith, as you said, that there are some risks, there are fears all the time. Like, I may have my own limitations, my own fears. Would it work? Like, people stick in their corporate way longer and they have their entrepreneurial spirits, but they don't take the leap of faith that you take.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Talas. That's amazing. So, talking about the fintech scene in Pakistan, tell us about a little bit about that, so that audience understand which space Tag is in, and so that they understand and what exactly Tag would be offering that would be different or innovative, especially in the fintech space.
Sure. So in my again, this is my personal opinion. This
Yes,
is personal opinion.
no problem.
No, not stepping on any others' feet. My opinion is that this fintech scene in Pakistan is still in very nascent stages. So it's a very greenfield. It's a super greenfield at the moment, right? So there is, I won't say there is not many significant fintech players as of yet in Pakistan. I mean, of course, there are, EasyPass and Jazz Cash, but I won't consider them as fintech players. I would consider them as a corporates with a financial product, which has some, of course, technology involved in it. They are not purely fintechs. They are not startups, right? So they're not fintech startups, right? So if you look at fintech startups in Pakistan, there are very few, that have actually created some hype, or have achieved something, right? And if you start looking at the EMI space, which is the Electronic Money Institute space, there are even fewer in the EMI space, which have been granted approval from State Bank. None of them have a full public product live yet, as of yet. So all of us, all of us, we are in the stage of of launching a product, right? So I would say fintech in Pakistan still very greenfield, still in very super early stages.
Yeah,
It's the ecosystem is just starting, so it would take some time before it matures.
right. Absolutely. Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead, Talal.
And with Tag also, what we're building um, is, you can say, we are starting with the basic banking, you can say payments and banking application. That's what we're starting with. Why we're doing it? Because we believe banking in Pakistan, as in every other country, is broken, but it's more broken in Pakistan. And so we want to come up, we are building a product that will hopefully disrupt the payments and the banking, mobile banking space in Pakistan. And so for that, we have built a world-class team. And so we are hoping that the product outcome would also be a world-class product that would, cater to the modern needs of, consumers, and especially the segments which are being neglected by the incumbents.
Right, absolutely. So Talal, you have moved back to Pakistan, so like you're operating in
Yes.
Pakistan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
So
how was that? Was it easy to move back to Pakistan and then have your team there, and or like operate like many startups? They have their presence in some other countries and then they operate. So tell us a little bit about that. Like if you moved, how was that move?
sure. So I just moved back here a couple of weeks ago to Pakistan. I mean, for the last 10, 12 years, I have lived in different parts of the world, mostly in Europe, but also in US and UK, and Canada. So after that, of course, Pakistan is a is a big change. But the thing is, I had been, I had been continuously in touch with Pakistan. So every year I would spend at least a month in Pakistan. I had also spent in between. I had spent a few months in Pakistan before also, in 2018 and so on. I have not lost. I would say I have not lost touch with with my roots, right? And that
Yes.
helps. Still, I would say I'm super new in the ecosystem, so it will take some time for me to get immersed in the system, but I'm getting there. And people are very receptive.
Yes.
Groups like Park Launch, but there are other groups from fintech side, which have reached out, and I'm in touch with them, and we are working together, and working with the association and so on. So there's a lot happening, let's say, in the background. But of course, this move, I mean, eventually the plan was always at the end to move back to Pakistan, right? So,
Yes.
but at now it felt like the right time to move, especially in the space what we are building. So if we didn't do it now, then of course there would be more players in the market. It would be difficult to then capture the market afterwards, right? So like first few movers in the market, they have some sort of edge, and I
Yes.
didn't want it to let go of that edge. So this is the idea of why I said, okay, if I have to do it, I have to do it now. So I quit my job, and let's do this.
Awesome. Yes.
Then talking about the teams. So my team at the moment, so we are only like 3 people working now in Pakistan. So five
Yes.
of our people, they're working from Berlin, from Germany, but a couple of them are moving to Pakistan next month. So convincing them, so that foreigners also to move to Pakistan, that's also the plan.
Yes.
Um, so so you remember Imran Khan telling people that people will
Yeah.
come to Pakistan to get jobs. Well, at least few people, they're moving to Pakistan to get jobs, right? So something
Absolutely.
definitely is happening, is going in the right direction.
Yes. So you got the Germans moved to Pakistan for
Yeah,
those jobs,
that's
right?
what
Awesome.
we do.
That's impressive. Right. Right. And how do you compare, Talal? You have such an amazing experience and working in so many different countries. So how would you compare Pakistan's ecosystem with the other ecosystem? Like, how would that? What's that from your perspective?
Um, so in how I would define it, I would give you with I would talk I would I would talk with examples, right? So let's look at the German ecosystem, right? So in German ecosystem, the first product, is always e-commerce. Like in e-commerce, you would have some big players in Germany. That would be Zalando. That would be the first big player that came out of Rocket. And then the second wave. So there's waves, right, in each ecosystem. So first wave is always e-commerce, and the second wave always is like tech-enabled startup. That would be Delivery Hero.
Yes.
That's also in Berlin, right? So there's a second wave, right? And from what I have observed, the third wave always is fintech, right? So that would be for Berlin, that would be N26, that will be Raisin, that would be Finleap, Solaris Bank, all of that. That would be the third wave. So that's how I look at also at Pakistan system or Indian. Let's talk about Indian ecosystem, right? So they had also the first wave of e-commerce, that would be Flipkart, right? Second would be tech-enabled startups, that would be Ola and so on, right? And third wave would be fintech, and that would be Paytm and GeoPay and all of that, right? So in Pakistan, what we have seen is the first two waves. So we have seen the first wave with the Raz, and the e-commerce ecosystem in Pakistan is booming, even though it's still filled with inefficiencies, but it's booming, right? So we had the first wave, then we had the second wave, which was, you could say, Airlift and Baikia and Careem and Food Panda. That would be the second wave, of tech-enabled startups. So in my understanding, the third wave has to be fintech in Pakistan also, and that's what we are here for. So we want to be the ones which pioneer this third wave by launching fintech products for Pakistan that would complement the first waves and
Yes.
multiply the growth. So that's how I would look at Pakistan's ecosystem. So it's still in early stages, but it has tremendous potential. It just has to be utilized in the right way, and with the right products, with the right kind of people, you could. What we have seen with Cream, for example, now out of Cream, there are so many different startups coming out of from the Cream alumni, right?
Yes.
So in Pakistan, if you come with the right people, you would see eventually a startup ecosystem would start to develop, right?
Yes, awesome, Talal. So we have a question from Asif Rao. What So focusing on that, what tag would be offering? Would it be payment transfer or lending or banking? People are very inquisitive to know that what tag would be offering, and if you could let us know about that.
So it would be payments app / mobile banking in the initially. So with that would come with the debit card, right? With the debit card, right? So you will have mobile app, that mobile wallet that would come with the Visa debit card. That's the first product, right? And that's targeted towards millennials and the women. That's the first segment we are targeting, right? So the second product we would be offering would be let's say for the multi-currency product, for another segment. Eventually we would be also doing lending, but that lending would be for salaried consumers in Pakistan. So overdraft product for salaried consumers, that's something we do have on the pipeline. So there would be lending product, but only for salaried consumers in Pakistan.
Right. So how do you see the regulatory landscape for a financial super app in Pakistan? So Talal, people want to know that what is super app? What does that mean? How would would be offering it, and how's Tag approaching this landscape?
Yeah. So Alibut is saying, is Tag similar to Revolut or Monzo? It's actually would be very much similar to Revolut. So you could say we are building Revolut of Pakistan, but eventually also of Middle East. That's the vision we are playing with. So as of yet, there is not a single big fintech player in Middle East either. So we are starting with Pakistan. We're starting with Revolut. Let's say Revolut of Pakistan, and then eventually we would want to move to Middle East. Regulatory landscape. State Bank has been very helpful. So I have been looking into this space for a very long time. As an early investor in Revolut myself, I wanted to start something like this in Pakistan also a couple of years back, right, in 2018. But at the time, the regulatory landscape didn't allow, to operate as an EMI in Pakistan. There was no possibility of fintech to operate in Pakistan as a EMI. The only possibility was for you to be a bank or to be a microfinance bank, which have very high, let's say, capital requirements, very high, like in millions, $10 million, $50 million capital requirement that you have to fulfill before you could get a license, right? So this implementation of EMI regulation, it's very recent, let's say, and with the new regime and change in State Bank. So there's implementation in State Bank. There is initiative in State Bank that now they are forwarding this. This landscape. So EMI is a very new thing, the recent thing, and as I mentioned, so none of the products in EMI space have been launched as of yet in public, right? So the idea is that we would be the first one. We would be the ones to launch it first in the public domain.
Yes, Talal. So in case of if somebody doesn't know Revolut or Monzo, so how would you explain that to the audience?
Yes. So I would think of it. We cannot use the word bank, right? So think of it as a mobile bank, right? So everything you do, you could do with your bank account and more, but through your mobile app. That's the idea. And you would also have, of course, a debit card to withdraw cash or pay with at point of sale system, right? But also more, for example, think of investing in stocks. Because that's also a possibility we would like to offer to our consumers, right? Then also think of investing in crypto when it's legal in Pakistan. So that's what Revolut also offers. There's cross selling of products. So insurance products that you could buy from the tip of your from your phone. You could make other purchases directly from your phone. You could pay your phone bills, all of that, through your app right away, right? But also more lending. So let's say your salary is being deposited into your tag account, right? And after some time, most of the people, as you would know, they live from check to check or salary to salary, right? And at the end of the day, they would have to borrow from their friend or family when it's end of the month, and if some unexpected expense comes. But with tag, for example, they would have the opportunity to get advance, like you get with telephone providers in Pakistan, like Jazz Advance or Telenor Advance, and so in a similar way, there would be possibility for them to have an advance for their salary, right? Then there's other possibility. There is other possibilities for saving products. There's so much more that you could do with the banking app. So the idea is to digitalize every aspect of banking, which we could, that is allowed by the state bank, for us to introduce to the Pakistani market. So there's a question around the virtual cards. So we would start with the virtual debit cards, and then physical debit cards will also follow very shortly. So within Q2 next quarter, you would also have physical debit cards that would be issued to the customers.
Awesome. So a lot of people in Pakistan who don't have a bank account. So how would Tag connect with them, or how would they connect with Tag? So what would happen in that case?
Yeah. So what basically Tag would allow them is to open account with Tag within 3 minutes. They take a selfie of themselves as they would Revolut. They would take a picture of their ID card, and basically that would enable them to open a bank account. Of course, it would come with a lower limit, with the lower limits that they would have. If they would want higher limits, then they would still have to do biometric verification, because that's a requirement for KYC from State Bank. But that limit is significant. You could, with the lower limit, just with selfie and with the ID card, they would still be able to deposit up to 50,000 rupees in the tag account every month. So it's still good enough for the Pakistani, let's say, market. But if they would want a higher limit, they could also get that. All they would need to do is to get them biometric verification from telephone franchise or a bank, right? And then that would also be possible. And they would able to make cash deposits at any bank in Pakistan over the counter. And also at some state, what we would also enable is also they would be able to make deposits at any agent that are being used by telecom providers to make deposits and make withdrawals.
Awesome. So Talal, could you tell us a little bit more about the funding of Tag and how you're planning, and how does the timeline look like and your scaling plans?
Sure. So we have raised like a smaller, let's say, angel round from individuals. And now at the moment, we are in a process of finalizing our seed round. We have more than 2 million in soft commitments from various investors, mostly from US investors and some Middle East investors. And we are in the process of finalizing, let's say, the lead investor. and hopefully we will be able to. We are aiming to close this by the end of the year, and we are again hoping that it would be a record, let's say, round record round for Pakistani startup at our stage, pre-seed stage or seed stage.
Absolutely, as you're saying that heading towards the end of the year, and it would be very important to ask here, how can Park launch community help Talal and help Tag team? Like, how would what would you say?
So we have taken some individual investors, but the ones which add strategic value. So if there are some investors on the Park launch community that can add, that believe that they can add some strategic value to Tag, I would be open to having that conversation. And we will also be discussing another possibility um, with Ali Bhai, that if there
Yes.
would be possible, if there's like a big demand, from Park Launch audience, if they would want to invest in tech, we could make a special purpose vehicle, where the audience from Park Launch can pool in the money, and if they want to invest in tech, we would be more than open to that.
Yes. And how does the timeline look like for next year, for 2021?
So for next year, of course, the first quarter, we are hoping to launch our product in Q1 next year.
Awesome.
Then also probably by end of the year, we would also be aiming for, I don't know, seed or Series A, depending on how big this round is and how we would categorize this round. But next one, of course, would be a lot bigger than this round. And I'm not, yeah, of course. So we would leave in the end at the end. So it's my email. It's talal@tagme.pk.
Okay, perfect. I can type it for you, so no problem. So Talal at tag.
Or Talal, or you can say talalg at talalg@tagdb.pk. That would be the one you could use.
At tag dot.
Tag. Yeah, I would. So there are a lot of questions coming. So okay.
Sorry about
So
yeah.
first my email. So it could be talal@tagmobilebank.com.
Perfect.
Talal at tagmobilebank.com.
At tagmobilebank.com. So we typed it here in our space. Is that correct?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
So next, there was a question around how we are different from JazzCash or EasyPaisa. Of course, JazzCash and EasyPaisa, they are so on the regulatory landscape, they are not an EMI. They are microfinance bank. So in a way, it's very similar to EMI, but also what you have to understand is EasyPaisa or JazzCash, they are not fintechs. They are part of bigger corporates. So and then of course people who have been using it, they know their primary use cases for EasyPaisa and JazzCash have been domestic remittance, and it's a product which is being used by yes. So they're asking if we are using a YC safe investment vehicle. Exactly, that's what we are using for raising our funds. That's what we have been using. Yes. So all our investments, they are with standard YC safe notes. That's what we have been using. So going back to the telcos, so their product has been very much targeted towards the lower income segment. So that would be like 50% of the population in Pakistan. So somehow they have not been able to break into the middle class and the upper class segments of Pakistan, and that's what we're targeting. So what we're targeting is the urban population, and middle class and upper class population. That's what we are targeting with our product, right? So initially, the lower income segment is not our target segment. So we are not targeting them. That's how we are different from the other telcos. Even though the telcos have been trying to break out from those segments, but they haven't been able to, because of the affiliation they have with the lower income segments, right? And so this is how, in terms of market segments, how we are different from the existing.
Right. And how would Tag approach those middle class segments, and how would that differentiate from the other players in the market?
So again, for example, like what I mentioned. So for example, take example of a household, like a housewife, right? So a housewife in Pakistan, for example, if she wants to go to a bank and open a bank account, first thing the bank's going to ask her for is a proof of income, right? If she doesn't have a proof of income, then good luck opening an account, right? So and same goes for youth, right? So most of the youth, when they want to make an online purchase or they want to order on Food Panda, or they want to order on, I don't know, Cream, whatever, they would use their parents' debit card, so they won't have their own bank account, right? So these are segments which are neglected by the incumbents. So this is the first segments we are targeting, um, um, which need a banking product. They need to be included in the financial ecosystem, right? And with our product, it would be so easy for them to be part of that ecosystem that it would be a no-brainer for them to join the ecosystem, right? And in Pakistan, so of course Pakistan is a cash intensive society, but the behavior is changing slowly, right? So people are ordering online a lot, online a lot. They're using this and new apps and so on, and wallets and so on. So there's a need now for this kind of product. And also it's about the scale. So this is a discussion I had with Faisal Aftab Bhai from Lexing Group. So in Pakistan, at the moment there's around 80 million, 85 million people with smartphones and 4G connectivity. But that number is going to reach around 100 million by June next year, right? And that's enough scale, right? To have a product like us, achieve scale. So there's going to be enough volume, and there's going to be enough people who would be able to use such a product, right? Before it didn't exist. This is why it didn't work before, right? So if someone has tried before, it didn't work because the volume was not there, the scale was not there. But now the ecosystem and the infrastructure has developed so much that we're getting there. And then there's 5G coming and so on. So the room for growth is like, the potential is just is huge.
Right. And what are the challenges that you're facing in doing that?
Yeah. So first I will answer this. Answer this question from Irfan Khan. So
yes.
How would we how would we beat the cash on delivery? Cash on delivery is a very inefficient system, and merchants hate it, consumers hate it, and this is why. And the issue is there is no other medium, that could be a good alternate for that. And so we are hoping that with Tag, we would be able to provide that medium to consumers and to merchants. It's costly for merchants. Also, cash on delivery is costly for merchants. Also, they said, so there's a whole study on it, and I can share it with them in person if they would like to. And that's also one of the tailwinds we are banking on, that e-commerce is growing tremendously in Pakistan, and yes. Tag would be one of the enablers that would help this segment scale even more. And with us, we won't have to call the bank and wait on the phone line for 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get your card activated for an online transaction for 1 hour window. You would be able to make a purchase right away. And we would at some stage we would also be introducing products for merchants, insurance, like PayPal, like that, something around those lines, where both consumers and merchants feel safe, and there's some insurance on the. But
right.
That's not.
And how do you Yes.
That's not in the early stages of the product. In the early stages, it would just be an enable, paying with Visa, right? That would be the initial product. But in future, we want to introduce a payment gateway where merchants and consumers can make secure payments.
Right. And how would that compare with the convenience that consumers have, especially on cash on delivery? Because they don't have any risk. They receive something and then they provide the cash.
Right. So the thing is, so normally when there are so many inefficiencies that are involved in cash on delivery, and I can, for example, also from the merchant, let's talk from the merchant perspective, right? So they have sent something, sure. And then consumer refuses to take the order. So there was this post from a startup which is selling books online, right? And they said we had like, I don't know, 50% of the books were returned, and now they have a big cash crunch issue, so they could go insolvent because people, who have ordered online, they have made all the expense. Merchants have made all the expense of delivering the books, but they haven't been bought by the consumer, right? So it's a
Yeah.
big risk also for the merchants, right? On the consumer perspective, I can tell you, right? So when I order online for cash on delivery, so you order it one day, but the order comes maybe two or 3 days later. So you never know when the order is arriving, if you are at home or not, right? And
Yes.
you know, if the people a person who is staying at home, he has the right amount of cash with them or not, right? So if your mother has
Yes.
enough money to pay for the for the delivery or
Yes.
not, right? Or whoever is at home taking delivery. So there's so many inefficiencies and costs, costs involved with cash on delivery that need to be taken out, like in any other modern ecosystem, like like people have done in other emerging markets. So not talking about
Yeah.
developed markets, but also emerging markets. It's
Right.
Pakistan, which is still on the cash and delivery model. It's far behind in the race, but we have to cover that, right?
Right. Absolutely. So you were talking about the challenges that Tag is currently facing.
So well, after funding, so after funding is secured, the
Yeah.
I think the first challenge would be for us would be to create customer awareness and to build customer trust, right? So we have to build customer trust that people entrust us with their money, right? As a new entrant in the market. um, of course that risk is a bit limited because we are partnering with well-known local banks, and we are using local banks as a partners. So that risk is kind of and we are regulated by state bank, so that would take away all the risk, but we would still need to educate the consumer about that, right? And so that's what I would see as the first major risk. And then of course, with growth, we would need further approvals from state bank and so on. That's kind of a regulatory risk, but we hope to manage that also.
Yeah. Absolutely. So touching a little bit about the other segment, Talal, you had such an amazing experience with Amazon as well. How does that help? Because like anything that we do and we develop a foundation, and the way you have such an amazing foundation to do what you're currently doing, how did that help you in what you're doing at Tag currently? So
Sure.
talking about a little bit Amazon.
Yeah. Okay. So I will come back to that. So the question is about Amazon. So regarding Amazon, I can personally talk about more about AWS, which is the Amazon Web Services, which is the organization which I have been part of, right?
Yeah.
Um, so with I could say easily that within Amazon, I had the opportunity to work with the smartest people um, ever. So in a single team, right? So the people I was working with, the other teammates I had, they were of the highest quality of people you could imagine in the room. And even every new hire, has to raise bar. That means they have to be better than everyone else in the team. And before they are hired, 7 or 8 people have to prove that they are that good. And there's discussion on that everywhere. And also, I don't know about US, but in Europe, how Amazon hires is they pay the best salary, and basically that's how they attract the best talent. And this is how they have been able to attract the best talent. So they pay a salary well above the market rate, and that attracts the best
Yes.
talent. And the experience I have with Amazon is no PowerPoints, no bullshits. If you have an idea, you have to write a 6 pager. um, and you work with the smartest people in the room, and everyone is so full of ideas. And you have the, let's say, the voice. If you want to voice something, if you want to move something, if you want to start a new project, there is always encouragement for that. And that's what I learned at Amazon. So what I learned at Amazon is,
Awesome.
for the best talent, you have to of course, find the best talent, and then you have to
Yeah.
nurture it and pay them above the market to keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Ali Hassan Butt that how can you elaborate in terms of would Tag be offering its own app and also could make it potentially a white label for other banks as well? Would it be like banks would be competitors or could be collaborators? How? How does that happen?
So we will not be offering white label. So we are building our own app, and that would be one of the differentiating factors. So we are collaborating with banks. We see banks not as competition, but rather as partners, right? So we are not holding physically. We are not holding the cash. Physically, the cash is being held or by our partner banks. They will be the ones holding the customer deposits, right? And this is how we are partnering with local banks in Pakistan, and we have already some agreements in place for that.
Awesome. And we have another question from Nadeem Haq that could not understand exactly the difference between Tag and EasyPasa. So what would be the differentiators?
So again, just to summarize what I've said earlier, EasyPasa is something which is affiliated with the lower income segment in Pakistan. Their product is primarily focused on mobile top-ups and domestic remittance. What we are building is a product for urban population, for middle class and upper class segments. Product wise, it would be different than EasyPesa and Jazz Cash. There are a lot of things which you cannot do with EasyPesa and Jazz Cash. For example, making online purchases and so on. The acceptability of cards at different POS and so on. Again, and they are not a fintech; they are corporate with a corporate organization. EasyPesa is a combination of 3 different organizations. It's Telenor Microfinance Bank, it's Telenor, and then it's also Ant Financial. They all move in different directions. so it's not the best example of fintech out there. And it's a corporate microfinance product that we are competing with. I would consider them as incumbent, not as a fintech, not as competition.
Another question about Nadeem Haq, a follow-up. What about financial management that is investing?
So financial management investment product is something on the roadmap, but not in the first year. So it's something for second year we would be offering for consumer, not in the first year. In the first year, it would be a basic product.
And so what is the growth rate that we're expecting?
So for the first year, we are targeting 100K users. That's what we are targeting for. We already have a couple of thousand signups already on our website. So we are targeting for the first year, we're targeting 100,000 users. If we reach that number, we would be very happy. If we reach beyond that, of course, we would be further more happy.
Exactly. And along the same lines, what are the 3 to 5 years plans?
Yeah. So for second year, what we're targeting would be 500,000 consumers in total. Then third year, 1.5 million customers, and then the number goes up. So
a question from Irfan Khan. Any bank can turn on tag link features at any time. How will you compete with the established bank?
Can you repeat the question? So I think can you read this question?
Exactly. Any bank can turn on the tag link features at any time. How will you compete with the established bank, the tag like features?
Any bank can turn on tag link features at any time. How will you compete with established banks, right? So established banks have been trying to compete with fintechs all over the world. The examples exist in US and in UK and emerging markets. Normally, if the established banks were, let's say, so efficient, there would be no need for tag. that would be the answer. But so I can give you example, right? So RBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland in US, they tried to have their own neo banking product with Bo. It failed. Deutsche Bank had tried and failed. So like there's so many examples. Better banks than Pakistani banks which exist in the market wanted to try to replicate a neo bank or a fintech, didn't succeed. Just doesn't work this way.
Yes, another aspect that Talal would be amazing to have your perspective. So what do you think about the Pakistani startups that if they cannot scale, what are the impediments that we have? If you can touch upon that, please.
So with the Pakistani startups, what I have seen, so this is again my personal opinion. I'm not like I won't claim to be an expert, but my opinion is, so with most Pakistani startups and most Pakistani founders, they haven't had the real experience of scaling. They have not been a part of organization where they have seen a smaller startup scale and they haven't been part of that journey, so they don't know the challenges, they don't know how it is done, right? And
Yeah.
so for example, like so me and my team, we have been part of startups at early stages and we have seen them scale. So be it Fiber, be it Trivago, and then afterwards, as VC, I saw startups scale from nothing to a huge company, right? So people have not worked in that dynamic before, and this is why in Pakistan we haven't seen startups that have actually scaled. And the ones which have scaled, for example, like Dream, right? So you
Yeah.
you you can see already, um, if the employees were rewarded, they're coming out with their own ideas and they are coming out with their own companies and they're succeeding. So
Yeah.
like the new, let's say the new tranche of entrepreneurs is actually coming from startup which has actually scaled, and that actually is differentiated in my opinion. So in Berlin, people from Zalando started Delivery Hero, and then Delivery Hero people started other organizations. Rocket people, they started different other startups, right? So it's the same thing. The wealth is passed on. The skills are passed on. That all of that counts. And when you launch startup. So in my team, I have people like my other co-founders and co-founding team. They have all been part of
Yeah.
startups where they started with a very small team and then eventually were leading bigger teams, right? And I think that's a difference. So uh,
Yeah.
people from corporate, they work with a different mindset, and it's very difficult to replicate that in a startup, and that's why mostly they fail. But people who have actually worked in a startup and scaled it and been part of the journey, they're more likely to, let's say, succeed in a startup.
You're right, Talal. Like, how does working in a big corporate and working in a startup helps to have your own startup? Like having had an experience in a huge company, in a corporate company, and then having your startup, then working with a startup, and then starting your own initiative. How does
So
that help?
so that so I did I would try to say that I did it on purpose, even though
Absolutely.
I did,
Yeah.
even though I didn't, but now I can say, okay, I did it on purpose. But no, actually,
Yeah.
I wanted different experiences. So I have had the experience to work in a startup that scaled, that I have had experience to work in a bigger corporate, and I had my own startup, and scaled that also. So all of that helps. With big corporates, you learn processes and you learn procedures, right? With
Yeah.
the startup, with the startup where you work, you learn how to do things, how to get things done quickly, in a lean manner, in an agile
Yeah.
manner. The agility, and the energy, and the initiative, all of that comes from the startup phase, from the startup, and then
Yeah.
processes and procedure, that are, and discipline that comes from bigger experience in the bigger corporates. So both of them
Absolutely.
actually
Yes.
have helped me develop into a person which I would say is in a position to work on a startup, and scale it in a proper way.
Exactly, Talal. That would be such a important lesson to learn, that all the young entrepreneurs that we have, that working in a big corporate, that gives the processes to scale, to have that idea, and also working in a startup before starting your own, that would be so helpful. So a
So,
question that we have from Nadeem Haq, that could you, if you can elaborate a little bit, how does Tag make money? Like, what's the business model?
so how does Tag make money? So Tag make money is through deposit, yes, and also through lending. So both of what he had mentioned, we would that would be both, or let's say, income streams, but also interchange rate. And there are other streams also which we are working on, that would make money for us. And then a question from Vikas: how does Tag help in expat lead startup, which focus on Pakistani market?
Yeah.
So what we're hoping for with Tag is hopefully we would be able to bring in a huge investment, startup investment in Pakistan through Tag, and through my personal venture network, that I had from my previous career, and then eventually, we would be setting example, or that, hey, Tag did it, so other startups can also do it. And then hopefully then we would be raising further rounds. So because one of the questions, for example, when I was talking to Sequoia, was the upstream in financing. So they said we haven't seen many upstream examples coming out of Pakistan where their startups were able to secure investments afterwards, right? After some growth. And we want to set that example. We want to set that path for the expats who are leading startups in Pakistan, that hey, this is possible. It's possible to bring capital into Pakistan, and then it's possible to scale and then bring further capital into Pakistan. And all of the startups like Baikia and Airlift and Kareem, they set examples for us. They've set a precedent for us, right? And then we have to start beating records. So okay, bring in more, and eventually the startup ecosystem will develop, and capital would not be a problem anymore. And also we will have some startups which actually scale and deliver.
That's awesome, Talal. Exactly what you said. So what do you think? How can expat community help the startups back in Pakistan?
So in my opinion, so if they have the experience, so like as I mentioned, if they have worked in a startup, and if they have worked in a corporate and they think they're ready for the entrepreneurial journey, so so either join a startup which is in early stages in Pakistan, or start their own startup in Pakistan, because Pakistan has, I literally believe Pakistan has a tremendous potential. Otherwise, I won't come here, right? I won't move my life here. Pakistan is on the right path, and there's tremendous potential. And if you can live with the new senses, that comes with that come with moving to Pakistan, and eventually Pakistan has a better future, and you could do a lot more in Pakistan that you would eventually do by living abroad. There's a lot more that can be done in Pakistan, and their experience would in those corporates and in startups would definitely help. And again, a person who has worked and lived abroad has that kind of exposure, which the Pakistani person who has only worked in Pakistan would not have, right? And that definitely helps. Another thing which I was thinking about is ownership mentality. So when you work abroad, you have this ownership mentality in Pakistan, which is not so easy to find, right? So if you have that ownership mentality and you bring that to Pakistan, and that eventually is transferred to other people you work with, that would be a really big help to the ecosystem.
Awesome. And working with your team that you scaled in Pakistan, or that you have the plan of scaling, what do you think, like in comparison with the other ecosystem, with the other environments, what are the strengths that Pakistan offers, or the Pakistani environment offers to these startups?
So it's a difficult question, because I don't want to be rude. So what happens is, in Pakistan, there's a big brain drain happening, right? So I'm talking, it's purely about no technical talent, right? So like the software developers and so on. So if there's any good software developer and on a senior level, they already move abroad, right? So either they're working in US, UK, or Germany, wherever they have already moved abroad. So in the end, you don't have big pool of very strong developers left in Pakistan. So I mean, you can hire good developers, but only on junior level. On senior level, it becomes difficult. It would be very few people. Like the pool is super small. There are of course good people, but the pool is super small. And when you're scaling startups, you need this kind of pool.
Yes, absolutely. So as we are towards the wrapping up of the session, what would you like to share, Talal, as your what would you like us to have key takeaways from your talk? It was such an amazing having you here. So what would you say? And what you have already talked about it, that in terms of how Pak Launch community can help you. But if there are some specific pointers for us, that would be very helpful.
So if you are interested in being part of, let's say, of TAG, you have my email. Feel free to reach out to me on that. I'm also going to post it on.
Is there a website? There was a question for the website as well, Talal.
Yeah, so it's tagme.pk. That's the website, tagme.pk.
Okay, tagme.pk.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
did we type it correctly?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
so you
awesome.
have my email address. You can directly reach out to me. You have the website, of course. You can see what we are building there. then if there are some investors who would like to talk to me, I'm also open to having that conversation. And then also expats, think about Pakistan. I would say Pakistan is on the rise, and now is the right time to be part of this ecosystem and help it, help it rise from, let's say, from nothing, from scratch, right? And there's definitely certainly potential, and you feel it when you come back. There's a vibe. Of course, there are problems associated with Pakistan also, but we have to cut through them, and we have to. You would also always face difficulties anywhere, wherever you are, right? So different difficulties in different places. In Pakistan, there's also difficulties, but there's also tremendous potential, and expats, they have the exposure. So if they could bring in that exposure and their experience, their knowledge to Pakistan and Pakistan ecosystem and help it develop. This is how also, by the way, Indian wiki is not opening for me. This is strange.
Sorry if I did not type that correctly.
I think it's correct.
Okay, then it's good.
Or they can also try tagmobilebank.com. Just so it should also be okay.
Tagmobilebank.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Tagmobilebank.com.
Yeah. Opens.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. So where was I? Yeah. So
you were talking about that message. Yeah.
Yeah. So if who else? So in India, how their ecosystem developed also was the people who have moved to US and UK, long time ago. They came back to India and they built those startups, right? So all those big startups, most of them initially, they all came from they all came from abroad. They were expats. They all came from abroad. So they started startups which they had seen succeed in other markets. They brought them to India, and this is how their startup ecosystem also started. And then eventually, it got so developed, and there were so many scale-ups in India that they were able to organically develop the ecosystem. So same applies to Pakistan. So now I already see a big movement happening of expats coming back to Pakistan and starting their own startups. But this has to continue, and this has to continue for longer period of time for eventually the ecosystem to develop and have that kind of, let's say, a scale that would be beneficial for the economy of Pakistan, right?
That's awesome, Talal. It was such a great pleasure to have you here, and we really enjoyed, especially hearing your perspective about all these, how Tag has that plans of scaling, how Tag would help the ecosystem back in Pakistan, and how we can help and become part of that journey and help the startups in Pakistan. What Pak Launch is doing is really impressive in regards to connecting talent all across the globe, and we were very lucky to have you here. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being such a great audience, and we would love to keep sharing with you along the same lines and the same topics. And Pak Launch team really thanks you for being part of our journey. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Raheel.
Thank you.